The neckline that I want them to do is shaped like this one here. You can see that it has a little V at the front, and it's like almost like a squared off or a rounded off square neckline, just to be different. So this is the neckline that the students were asked to do. So this is the lining for a mock-up that I'm doing for my Bradford class. I want to show them how to do the neckline, and this is with that class in mind, just to remind them the markings. So the markings are a single notch for the center front at the reference points. The center front and the side front each get a single notch because they go together there. So there's a single notch here, a single notch there, and they do go together very, very well. Okay, so you can see that. You see a single notch here, single notch here, and a single notch here, so that they line up. Same principle applies to the side. So the side seam has a single notch on the front as well as the back. The side back has a double notch here and here, and a double notch here and here, so that we know the line up. The center back only has 3 notches. Okay, just the center back. So it's 1, 1, 2, 3. That makes life much easier. Now here's the pattern piece. This is on the lining piece because that's where I want my markings. I also have the markings on the front of the garment just to make sure that they line up. But to be absolutely certain that, because I will be sewing on the lining side, that it is going to be perfect and equal on both sides, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tailor tack. Yes, everybody's favorite job, tailor tacking, but it is so incredibly necessary. Now we're going to be going through the paper. Now you're probably wondering why I didn't cut just the seam allowance. I don't like doing that because as you work with the garment, putting it together, the neckline will have a tendency to stretch. Yes, you can do the stay stitching around it. That might also pull, so then you'd have to iron it, and it's just a little bit of extra work. This way, you cut it out exactly how the pattern is made to begin with, which would be a jewel neckline. Then you tailor tack around, you sew it together before cutting anything out. Once you've cut it out, once you've stitched it, then you can cut it out. You cut both the fabric and the lining together. Now the students were asked to do a facing and not a lining. I chose to do a lining because the fabric is very thin. So the facing would look like this. It comes just around like that, down. And you want to have a nice space down here, at least 6 centimeters down from the bottom of the point to the bottom of the facing. You want to have about 6 centimeters, otherwise you run the risk of it flopping out, which you don't want that. So we're going to start off the tailor tacking. Now as I said, this is going through paper, so it's a specific technique. So you're going to start at the very center. You're going to insert the needle and come up on the line. Now you notice that I'm not coming up very close. I'm putting the needle in, and I'm giving myself some room. Okay, can you see the needle there? I'm giving myself some room. That's a pin. There's the needle here. All right. So then I'm going to leave a little tail here. Next thing, where this stitch is, I'm going to do a tiny little back stitch there. That's where the tiny stitch comes in, and I'm going to come up on the line further up. So I have a tiny little stitch here, and you're going to have a loop. the loop looks like this. I'm going to try this with some red thread. I have some green thread here, yes. Some green thread, that it'll probably show up better on the white paper. So let's try this again. You're going to put in the needle and you're going to come up on the line. Now I want this completely square, so I'm going to come up right on that corner. Now I'm going to do a tiny, tiny little back stitch, and I'm going to come up on this other line. And I'm leaving a loop. Okay? And you repeat the process. So you have a tiny little back stitch, come up on the line, leave a loop. Now over here, I want to round it off a little bit. So I'm going to continue on in the same manner, tiny little back stitch, up on the curved line. Because I have two lines here. I have this line that's going this way that I want to use, but to draw it out, I had to draw it straight so that I get the right angle on it. So I have to draw it straight and then curve it. So I want to go on the curved line, whereas on this end, I want to use that straight line. Okay, so here we go. And look at how fast that is. It's very easy. Okay. So here we go. You don't need to be, as I said, you don't need to have the loops very close together. Okay, so you see they're actually quite far apart. I would say they're about 2 centimeters apart. Okay, I'm going to continue on with the white thread because the green one finished to save some time. Okay, so there you go. And this is only because I'm going through paper. I'm going to show you how to tailor tack beside the paper. Okay, so there you have it. See how fast that was? And I'm going very slowly so everybody can see what's going on. There we go, done. Now if I were marking beside the paper here, you can see this line here. If I were marking beside the paper, and I do this for, especially for menswear, for the suit jackets, where you have different seam allowances for different seams. You don't need to have so much at the front, but you do need it at the back. You don't need so much at the undersleeve, but the front undersleeve, but you do need it at the back undersleeve. So it's a very necessary skill to learn. So for this, you just poke the needle through, come up beside, then poke the needle through, and you can do it twice and leave one loop. Okay, you see how fast that's going? I'm almost at the end already. And you leave a loop. You see? And on the one side, you have the loops. On the other side, you have that. This one here, on the one side, you have all of these loops. On the other side, you have your marking. Now, do you see why I like to use the white? Look at how much that stands out rather than the green. Okay? So now you're wondering, okay, now what? Now you've got this all stitched or all tailor tacked. I have my markings in there. I have a clippy here, and I have my notch here, my other notch there. To mark the seam allowances, I have clippies here. Okay? So now I can take that pattern piece off comfortably because I have I've transferred my markings from the paper to the fabric. Very important to do that. If you don't do that, you'll be basically up the creek without a paddle when you're trying to sew. Unless you have a lot of experience and you know what you're doing. So now I'm taking the paper right off the pattern piece. Okay, that's not going to cooperate. All right. Now you're wondering, what's going to happen up here where I've gone through the paper? So I'm just going to take and I'm just going to pull through. Pull the stitches through. That's why you do that tiny little back stitch. Okay? This will be much more clear. That tiny little back stitch, you do it so you can pull right through the paper. Okay? There. The paper is still intact, as you can see. Okay, it just has little perforations in it, which is fine. All right, I still have my markings. And I have my marking here for the neckline, as well as here for the armhole. Okay, so now I have to separate them because this is only half. So they have to be separated. Now the reason you leave the loops rather than cutting them is so that they won't come out on you. So here we go. So you see what's happening here? Now you're going to take your scissors and you're going to snip through them. See? Trying not to cut the fabric. There we go. So I have my markings on one side, my markings on the other side. And I know which is the right and the wrong side because the clipped sides are on the inside telling me that that's the right side. Now I have to do the neckline. So the neckline, same idea. You're going to pull them apart. Just like that. Okay, you can see how easily that works. And then you're going to clip them. Okay, over here, you're going to lift up and you're going to pull or cut. Then you're going to open them. This is the final little piece. And there you have all of your markings. The green is a little hard to see, but imagine if that were all white. Let me outline it with chalk. And that's not a bad idea to do either, to outline it with chalk. So that way you don't lose your markings. And you can even, if you like, before sewing, you can pull out the tailor tacks and they won't get in your way. I like to leave them in there for that extra measure of security. So there you go. And that's how you transfer your markings from the paper to the fabric.